So next up, we have item number 158, last but not least. And we're going to have our city manager tee up the item.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem and council and community. As you know, after a months-long process with extensive community consultation to identify the best candidate for the job, I'm proud to bring forward Joseph Chacon as my appointment for the next Austin Police Chief. As many of you know, Chief Chacon has served with the Austin Police Department for more than 2 decades, including the past 6 months serving as interim chief. Prior to his interim appointment, Chief Chacon served as assistant chief for almost 5 years, overseeing patrol, special operations, specialized patrol, investigations, intelligence, professional standards, and training and recruiting. I'd like to take a moment to describe the process and how we got here. In March, the city released a survey asking the public to identify the skills and characteristics, background and experience, and top priorities they believe that were most important for the next chief of police. Responses to the survey helped establish the selection criteria for this position. In April, we solicited additional feedback from community groups, including 5 online community input meetings and constituent calls from the city's 311 service. The process included a series of interviews featuring panelists drawn from city staff and stakeholders, followed by 2 public forums in August offering community members opportunities to meet and give questions to the final candidates for the position. Our recruitment process was driven by feedback from our community members and involved community members. I want to give a heartfelt thank you to everyone that helped us reach this important decision, not only for our community, but for our workforce as well. With that, I'd like to offer Chief Chacon an opportunity to address the council before we open it up for questions. Chief?
Thank you, City Manager Cronk, Mayor Pro Tem, council members. I'm really just incredibly grateful to be standing here right now and talking about this, to have this opportunity to lead an amazing organization of men and women who care so deeply about public safety and about this community as I do. And I just look forward to your questions this evening, and thank you very much.
Colleagues, do we have any questions? Councilmember Kelly, then Councilmember Fuentes.
Thank you very much for being here today, Interim Chief Chacon. Some of these questions we went over previously. I'd like to know that, so the internal survey completed by the Austin Police Association rated you for preference at 10.38% of the top 3 candidates. Given that 1 in 10 people wanted you as the leader for the department, you will have a challenging task ahead to boost the morale. Given the importance of working as a team, how do you intend to unite the department holistically to serve the community together?
Yeah, thank you, Councilmember, for that question. I think part of what is driving the morale issues are things that I've been talking about quite a bit, including staffing, which is a challenge right now. We've had to make some really tough decisions in the department to move people back to patrol to make sure that we're maintaining our emergency and urgent response times and keeping our community safe. Many of those folks that we had to move back had some really good positions that they had enjoyed, some of them for a really long time. And I know, and believe me, I don't take it lightly, that those are tough decisions to make. But I feel that it was in the best interest of our public safety to do that. And what I can tell you is that I've been urgently working towards refilling the ranks of the officers that have retired and have resigned from our department in recent months. And we have restarted our academy and have 2 more academies in the next fiscal year. So we're going to be working urgently in that direction, as well as me being effective in my communication with the men and women of the department, sworn and civilian, to understand that we're going to move forward and do great things with this department, and that is what my messaging is going to center around.
So you said that you're working urgently to fill those vacant patrol positions. I'd like some more clarity about how you're doing that when there's only 1 academy happening right now and we are waiting on those cadets to graduate.
I think the urgency really is around the rate at which our academy classes have to move forward. The sooner that we can start those classes, the sooner they'll graduate and the sooner we get those brand new officers out on the street. So my urgency really is related to how well this academy is doing. This academy is one that we're working in a model that we've never done before, and so we're really building it out. And we're working with our, with our partners that are overseeing the process, and we'll be reporting back to council, as well as those that are helping to make sure that we are, keeping a diversity, equity, inclusion lens, as well as the anti-racism training that is important for our department right now. All of those aspects are being built into our new cadet class.
Thank you. So everyone seems to have an opinion on policing today, but very few have actually done the job and understand the reality of it, which puts you in a very unique position. Could you please explain to the public how you intend to take direction from the council body as a whole?
I think that the council really represents the community at large. You are the elected members of our community. I've often said, and continue to say, that our police department must engage with the community, which really has me engaging with you. And so that, over the last 6 months, is what I've been doing. I have been working with our council offices on the requests that come, on the issues that they raise that come from constituents, making sure that I'm responsive and timely. And I think, you'll find that if confirmed, that will be what I will continue to do moving forward.
Thank you. I've heard from some officers that you all are having trouble recruiting qualified candidates for the role of officer at APD. Is that true? And if so, what do you attribute that to, and how might you address it?
I think overall, across the country, we have departments that are having a harder time right now recruiting into the law enforcement profession. It's a really tough time to be a cop. And we're no different. However, we are probably doing better than most. We continue to have people, in the first week we opened our portal to accept applications, we had a rush of applications. It has slowed down somewhat. What's important to know is that we are not going to lower our standards. This community expects and deserves quality police officers that are coming out of the academy, that are going to go out into our community with the responsibility of maintaining safety, and we're going to maintain those high standards.
Thanks. The Citizens Police Academy is a very valuable engagement tool. Having taken that class, I understand the value that it has on policing in general in the community and helping misspell some of the myths about what it is you all do. Could you explain to the public why the program's under your review, what your vision is for the program moving forward, and what the timeline is on starting that class again?
Certainly. I share your sentiment about the Citizens Police Academy. It's a great way for our community to truly understand police work. We've run many classes going back many years. What we have done, obviously, COVID put a stop to that early last year, and we are examining the program to make sure that we're delivering it in a consistent way, similar to what we're doing in our police academy, applying that diversity, equity, inclusion lens over the training curriculum that we are essentially training to the community. And once that is complete and COVID has lifted to the point where we feel very comfortable bringing people into a closed room setting, then those classes will resume.
Thank you. As a follow-up to that, my understanding is that class has been under review for several months. Can you explain to me why it's taking as long as it is to be reviewed?
I think right now, council member, we're balancing it with many of the other things that we're doing as a department. It obviously takes staff to put the CPA on, and right now I have many staffing needs that I'm prioritizing to make sure that we're maintaining public safety. And so I have every intention, certainly, of starting the CPA back up. We just need to do it when it's timely to do so.
Thank you. And that's actually a good segue. My next question is about the
Councilmember
announcement.
Kelly, if I may, real quick.
Yeah.
I wanted us to.
This is the last one.
Okay,
Sorry.
thank you.
Thank you. The announcement that was made yesterday in regards to operational changes on 911 calls is alarming several people in the community. Of the list of police priority responses, do you envision a different criteria in the future And if so, can you tell us what you would change in the criteria and how you might make that happen?
The criteria that we've changed our response protocols is really around determining which calls are those emergency calls that require an officer to actually respond and which ones are scenes that are no longer active. And really, it's a report-taking function. And what we're doing is making the availability of 311 or reporting it on the phone and reporting it online through iReportAustin.com available to our folks and letting them know we're not going to be able to respond to those calls right now because of staffing issues. I think that this also falls in line with the desires of our community that they have voiced through the Reimagining Public Safety effort, and having either officers not respond to those calls that they don't need to respond to, or in some cases such as a burglary call that may require the collection of evidence, we're able to dispatch a civilian technician out there to go ahead and pick up that evidence or take fingerprints and do those kind of things. It's also about respecting our community's time. If we continue to stack these type of calls in our queue to respond to, many times our citizens are waiting hours for an officer to respond, and that's not good either, and we want to give them a better option.
Thank you, Chief, and thank you, Mayor Pro Tem and Council, for giving me the time to ask those questions, because this is a very important decision we make today. Thanks.
So before we move on, I just want to make sure to reiterate, if you could keep it to one, maybe two questions, and then we'll keep going, and if we have more time, then we'll go around again. But I want everybody to get the opportunity to, while we're on the dais, to get to ask their questions. Councilmember Fuentes was next, and then Councilmember Kitchen, and then Mayor Adler.
Thank you, and thank you, Councilmember Kelly, for asking the question about the calls, and Chief Chacon, thank you for your response. I think it's super important that we, as council members, since we have information from our chief, that we're sharing back that information with the community in any interviews that we participate in, because that's really good information to share out and will help address some of the misinformation that is out there. The question I have is around the handling of sexual assault cases. As you know, that is a top issue, one of the top issues for our community. We heard today from several survivors of sexual assault. The department has a history of mishandling sexual assault cases. And so my question is centered around what measurable and meaningful improvements are you willing to make and commit to around sexual assault cases? And if you could also talk about what measurable improvements, and then also if you could touch on the training that is going on right now with the Academy and any in-service training as well.
Just to clarify, the training at the Academy related to sex crimes?
Yes.
Okay. So with regard to the measurable improvements that we've made in the time that we've really been looking at this, from a staffing perspective, we have increased our sex crimes unit year over year. Going back to 2018, we added 4 detectives. We've added more detectives since then. To today, our sex crimes unit has 20 detectives in it, along with 3 supervisors and our victim service counselors. We also increased the number of victim service counselors assigned to sex crimes. As a single standalone unit in our department, it has more detectives than any other unit does. We highly prioritize the investigation of these crimes. It's been important to make sure that our detectives are receiving the training that is victim-centered and trauma-informed. We have moved strongly in that area and have had our brand-new detectives that are coming in. They have to complete that training, including trauma-informed victim interviewing, making sure that we get them to the proper conferences, such as the Texas Association Against Sexual Assault Conference, that provides many good courses in this same area. You know, we have really placed that, that value on these type of cases. We've rejoined the SART. That was something that I did when I took over as the interim chief, and I just issued a recommendation to the Travis County Commissioners Court today to adopt the Austin Travis County SART as the multidisciplinary team that will fulfill our needs related to state law. So I hope that people can see that I'm placing that value in that. As far as the training that's going on in the academy with regard to our brand new cadets, you know, having coming in and teaching a block related to sex crimes is one small part of our academy. The bigger issue really is looking at how we interact with victims of crime and our survivors of sexual assault, and teaching our officers how to be able to interview with a trauma-informed and victim-centered stance, and how they have those interactions. There's a very good course that is put on through IACP that we're training our detectives in. There are elements of that are going in, and we are looking to weave that through really all of the different courses that we have as we're going through the curriculum review right now at the academy.
Thank you.
I believe it was Councilmember Kitchen and then Mayor Adler, and then Councilmember Ellis.
Oh, jeez. Thank you. Okay, it's late. All right, okay. I have one question and one follow-up, and then I'll turn it over to others. So thank you, Chief Chacon. I think you spoke to this partially earlier, related to the Reimagine Task Force and the recommendations from that. So I just want to ask you directly, will you agree to work with community groups and members of the Reimagine Task Force on a long-term, comprehensive public safety model for Austin that includes the important work of civilians within APD and non-police solutions to social problems?
Yes.
And a follow-up related to that is the Austin Cares program. As you know, Austin Cares is our innovative, nationally recognized program where we have added mental health and asking for a counselor as an option when people call 911. And we are putting in place, or have put in place, protocols where someone who is in the midst of a mental health emergency can have the services of a counselor to work with them. And so I want to ask for your commitment to continue to champion that effort, and also give you an opportunity to speak to the work that you've done around mental health issues in the past.
Thank you, Council Member. First of all, you have my strong commitment to continue in this area. It's an area that I feel professionally and personally very strongly about, helping to find better outcomes that are for those people that are living either with mental illness or disabilities. I think that the measure that you talked about, the crisis call counseling program that we have on our 911 call center floor is, as you said, a national model. It's something that we've been working towards for a very long time. I have, as both an assistant chief and as the interim chief, worked in this area with our behavioral health and criminal justice advisory committee here in Austin Travis County, working on trying to intercept people that are living with mental health issues at the earliest possible point before we have to get law enforcement involved. So really getting those people that have the expertise to help them and keep them from that crisis moment when people have to call 911 because somebody is, some situation is out of control. So you have my strong commitment to continue to do that.
Thank you. And I want to thank the other questions prior to mine, and particularly the questions related to sexual assault. I'm not going to ask anymore because I know other council members will be. So if there's time at the end, I'll ask more questions, but I'll pass the baton at the moment. Thank you, Chief.
Thank you. I believe it was Councilmember Ellis. Oh, Mayor Adler, Councilmember Ellis,
Okay.
Councilmember, I'm sorry, and then Councilmember Alter, and then Councilmember Poole.
Chief, I appreciate the process that you've gone through. I do have a couple questions, and then I'm interested in the questions that I know some of my colleagues will ask as well. You have said that you support a data-driven approach to staffing levels in the police department. You've said publicly that you don't support setting static police staffing levels like 2 per thousand, or even 2.3 or 2.5 per thousand that's being discussed in the community now. Why is that? And if you don't support setting a static level, what is it you support, and can you explain what that is?
Certainly, thank you, Mayor. I think it's important, when we start talking about things like setting just a static level, many times they're based upon older methodologies that at the time made sense for police departments, but what I can tell you is that we've gotten much better in the area of analyzing data, analyzing call loads, analyzing personnel distribution, and have the ability really to, we tout ourselves as an evidence-based and data-driven police department. And I feel like, we need to be using that data to determine how we're going to determine staffing levels. So, I think going forward, the important thing is that we determine what services our community wants to see be delivered, and then use the models that we develop to be able to determine exactly how many officers it's going to take to attain that. I just think that's a smarter way to do business, and that's what we are actively doing right now at the Austin Police Department.
And I appreciate that work. And just to be clear, you don't support setting static levels for determining staffing levels for policing.
I think that it's important to determine what the level that's appropriate as opposed to an arbitrary number that might be thrown out there, if that makes sense.
It does, thank you. And then also with respect to staffing, I have a question. You recently instituted that new policy where we would no longer expect police officers to handle animal services calls or nonviolent situations where there's really only a need for report taking or beginning investigations, all work that could be handled by a criminal technologist. From a policy standpoint, is that a good thing to try? Whether you're 300 officers overstaffed or 300 officers understaffed, is that still a good thing to try?
I think it makes sense. And Mayor, I do want to be clear because I think there has been, misinformation out there about what it really means. If there's an emergency situation, people should call 911 and they can expect an emergency police response. What we are talking about is the calls that are no longer in progress. There is no imminent danger to life or property. And it does make sense to look at alternative measures to allow for those reporting, if that's all it really is just taking a report, so that we can keep our officers available on the streets for those in-progress calls to which we have found ourselves short lately. So, I think that's really behind the need for the change. I think from a policy standpoint, it makes a lot of sense. And I do think that as we have gone through the reimagining effort, it meets the needs of that as well.
And I appreciate that. And I'll just conclude with, I think what the community is looking for is a police chief that obviously that will fulfill the primary function of keeping an already safe community safe, but also joining with the community and helping to champion, trying always to innovate and find new and better ways for us to be safe and to use our resources and to really let our police officers do the important function on focusing on those things that really only police officers, a sworn officer with a badge and a gun, can do. You've done that with this initiative, I think. I also want to say that I really appreciate, similar to what Councilmember Kitchen asked, the diversion of calls now in more frequent situations to mental health first responders. I think at one point when we started off, only 1% of the cases were were able to be referred, and I think you have that percentage up to 10%. Now, is that the number I think that you had said at one point?
The most recent report that I received showed that close to 10% of our calls now are being diverted.
And I think that's great. Some cities are up over 50%, so I hope we keep up that work, not only because it's the right response to that situation, but again, because it means that we're not using our police officers as the way we intersect with mental health or with poverty in our community. And that enables them to better focus on the real important function that we need our police to do. Thank you.
Councilmember Ellis?
Thank you. You're doing a good job of keeping track of all of us. I wanted to ask about victim services. There's been requests about your communication with victim services. Are you committed to strengthening your relationship and communication with the representative from victim services, or is that not possible, and why hasn't that happened yet?
You know, I appreciate that question, Councilmember, and you know, we've, myself personally, as well as my staff, we've been trying to figure out the best way to support victim services. I am aware of the previous council resolution that was related to it, and so what I stand ready to do today is to commit on several levels to increasing, the visibility of victim services within our department, their access to executive staff, and to overall policy decisions. So what I will do is go ahead and include our Victim Services Division Manager in our executive staff meetings, give that person direct access to me and to executive staff to make sure that we are aware of everything that's going on with regards to victim services and how they're supporting all of our investigative units, as well as to give them a formalized process for input into policy decisions and policy making. So sitting in the executive staff meetings really means that they have a voice, the same as the other high-level leaders in our department, and I commit to do that.
I appreciate that commitment. I also wanted to ask a question about gun violence in our city. Obviously, the state of Texas now has permitless carry. What is the department currently doing to help minimize gun violence? And is that overlapping with the Office of Violence Prevention? And what else should we know if you want us to take any action at the City Council to make sure that we can help our community stay safe?
You know, gun violence, I've been talking quite a bit about it over the last 6 months, and really what I've been observing even longer than that is a surge in gun violence. And that, even though as a city, we've mentioned it, I've mentioned it, overall, our city is very safe when you compare to similar cities in the U.S. Our violent and property crime rates are both down overall. What we are seeing a surge in, as other cities are, is gun violence. It's driving our homicide rate, it's driving our aggravated assault rates, and it is concerning. Early on in my term as the interim chief of police, I started the violence intervention program with the purpose of getting illegally owned guns off the street, of targeting offenders that were serial or chronic offenders for gun violence, and being very intentional about the prosecutions, whether that was at the state level with the district attorney or at the federal level with our U.S. attorney. We partnered all of that together to come up with a program. The program's been running for about 5 months now. We are getting to the evaluation stage to determine how do we need to change it. Is it going to continue? I can tell you right now it's continuing. But how we are going to continue to adapt based on the results that we've seen. I've also said several times that we are overlapping with the Office of Violence Prevention. I think it's incredibly important not just to be reactive, but to actually be proactive and to look at the systemic issues that we might have in society that are driving some of our youth and some of our other residents towards gun violence, and how can we stem that? How can we find some measures to drive down things such as family violence and other serious offenses through preventive measures. So yes, we are working kind of on both fronts.
Thank you. I very much appreciate that. And I know that some of the burglary and theft conversation overlaps this. I think many of us have heard stories of vehicles being stolen. There's been an uptick through the pandemic, I would say. But I know that firearms are likely to get stolen out of vehicles too. So I know a lot of us on this dais have done work about safe storage and educational campaigns. And I look forward, if you are confirmed tonight, to being able to partner with you in some of those educational campaigns.
Thank you.
Councilmember Alter.
Good evening, Chief Chacon. This morning, during the public comment for this item, which seems like a lifetime ago, we heard from several sexual assault survivors reminding us that we don't have a really good track record and that APD does not have a good track record of helping our sexual assault victims, our survivors. We heard about problems at the SART. We heard about problems with officers not answering or saying that they couldn't investigate cases. We've heard about instances where detectives in our sex crimes unit are not trained properly or thoroughly. We have been in the national news because we've had cases that have been exceptionally cleared. We have had to, we've been sued by multiple survivors. What is your assessment of how APD has handled sexual assault to date? And tell me what you are going to do differently moving forward. And, don't tell me you added 4 detectives, et cetera, you added to victim services, because that was pushed by our budget and they were not asked for in the budget by APD. And I know you were not chief at that time. But this dais is asking for meaningful change in sexual assault response. For me, it is one of the #1 things that I'm looking for in a chief. And I still need to hear from you your commitment and action on this issue.
Thank you, Council Member. I'm going to start with part of your question where you asked what my thoughts are about how we've handled cases in the past. And I think that we have fallen short. We have not always done our best work in this area. We let victims and survivors down by allowing a sexual assault kit backlog to be created and to grow over time. And we've had other issues which we have resolved, such as the DNA issues, which directly affect our survivors and other things. What we have done to come along in those areas, we joined the Sexual Assault Kit Initiative program, and we have been almost 3 years now backlog-free. The state law actually says that we have to submit a sexual assault kit within 90 days. We've been meeting a 60-day timeline on average. We are also meeting the timelines for CODIS upload. We've created a cold case unit and a victim notification protocol for notifying victims of old sexual assaults that might have happened many, many years ago and have now come to light. What I want to tell you here on the dais is that you have my strong commitment to continuing to have quality sex crimes investigations, to make sure that we are putting the right, not just training, but the right training that is trauma-informed and victim-centered into place. I communicated with the SART that asked me to come and told them that I would, pending the outcome of this confirmation, and I stand by that commitment. And I also will commit to meeting with the SART on a regular basis so that we have improved relations between APD and the SART. So I'm hoping that you can feel how strongly that I feel about this as well. And I'm not proud that we have fallen short, but I can tell you that moving forward, we are going to do better.
So thank you. I appreciate your commitment that you've expressed. It is my expectation that we will see improved training in the sex crime unit, that you will, as you have promised tonight in this setting and in others, that you will meet with the SART and you will sit down with them and you will talk about how we can improve APD's response, how you can improve the relationships. It is not good enough for the APD representative to the sexual assault response team to go and show up and have their camera off and to refuse to participate effectively. It is not good enough for you to not share the data. Those things need to happen. We are all on the same team, and it should be APD's desire to treat our survivors with respect and to help them achieve justice. And, you know, it's not lost on me that, you know, sexual assault, 90-some% is women as the victims. And, you know, there needs to be a sea change in how we respond and how we think about what our obligations are to our survivors and all of the survivors who don't ever show up at APD because they're frustrated and they hear that they shouldn't. This is going to take a lot of work. You have a dais that has committed. You have a supermajority female dais. And we expect change, and we are going to hold you to that. And it can't just be in words like victim-centered and trauma-informed. Those are just words if there's nothing behind them. I'll pass it on to someone else.
Councilmember Poole.
Thanks. Thanks for being here tonight.
Thank you.
Chief Chacon. Among the initiatives begun under your tenure as your interim tenure are, and you mentioned this, I think, in one of the previous questions, violence intervention program to curb gun violence, and also setting performance metrics for the civilian unit in the police department that is poised to handle certain non-emergency cases. Would you speak to both of these a bit, to these initiatives, and do you intend to continue them?
Just the last part of your question, ma'am.
Would you speak a bit to initiatives like the violence intervention program to curb gun violence that you have pioneered, and also the performance metrics for the civilian unit that handles certain non-emergency cases? Could you talk a little bit about initiatives that you have begun as the interim chief, and do you intend to continue them should you be confirmed tonight as chief of police?
Thank you very much. I think that it's important that we continue to innovate as a police department. We cannot, in my opinion, in 21st century policing, continue to think that doing the same thing the same way, and in many cases we've seen that we have not seen really good results, is going to result in different results. So we have got to get smarter about doing policing. While the violence intervention program, which I talked about, is, in my opinion, a great program that that was put together by my folks at my direction to be able to curb gun violence, it really is a small part of the overall problem that we have, which I think is systems-based, is really based in our society. And so we've got to look more broadly. I think that means engaging with our partners here in the city, the other departments that we can, such as the Office of Violence Prevention, to look at more innovative programs. I also think that it's important, when we talk about innovation, to look at the way that we're doing our training. We have completely retooled our training at the Training Academy, moved from that paramilitary style training model to one that is an adult learning environment. I think that this council will see at the midpoint report that's coming out that we have been largely successful in doing that, and the training is moving forward at a very good pace, but also that we have cadets that are fully bought in, that have received training that no other cadets have ever received before. I think that just from that trust, that trust piece that's so important between the police department and the community, a major change that I made was with the release of our critical incident videos when officers are involved, say in an officer-involved shooting or other critical incident. Previously, we had a 60-day timeline to release those, and we only ever met that timeline once. I changed it so that we were going to release video within 10 days. And we have had one incident since, and we released it on day 9. So we met our timeline. We're going to continue to look at, I think that's so important for transparency and the trust building with our community that has questions about police action, that we do that in a timely way. And that, I make a commitment to keep on doing those and other types of similar programs.
Thank you.
Councilmember Renteria. And before you go, I have it noted that the council members who haven't gone yet are Councilmember Casar, Councilmember Tovo, and then myself after Councilmember Renteria.
Yes, Chief. I'm a big advocate for community policing. We implement that in my neighborhood 20 years ago, and we have one of the safest neighborhoods in East Austin. And, what got me all excited about the new cadet training class was that the commitment that and the recommendation that the consultant did said about they were going to implement community policing and teach their cadets about getting familiar with the neighborhood they're going to patrol and get to know the people that they can reach out to there. So how committed are you to make sure that we do implement those type of programs?
Yeah, thank you, Councilmember. The program you're talking about, we refer to it as Community Connect. So the way that the best way I can describe that program for those that aren't familiar with it is that, when our cadets enter the academy really is designed to show them how to do the job, what tools and what training there is, and many other aspects of how the Community Connect piece for me was really about why. Why are you stepping into this line of work? And they have a 2-week immersion program into our Austin community with different parts of our community, different stakeholders, and sometimes even our marginalized and disenfranchised parts of the community, so that they understand the human beings and why they're getting into this line of work. You absolutely have my commitment to continue those type of programs, so that right from the ground floor, as we're building a brand new police officer, they understand the commitment to community policing.
And I also, in my community, not all districts are the same. I have a lot of immigrants in my community, and not only just Latinos, but also Asians and all different immigrants coming into, and they do have a very difficult time understanding, especially if you don't know their language, and they might be afraid and feared. I hope that you really train your officers to realize that this is a multi-nation community now, and I believe that we also have a lot of people in my community that are having disability, mentally disability. So I want to make sure that the officers that you're going to be training and sending out there realize that some of these people might not know how to communicate with them, and that they make sure that they don't go around shooting someone.
Yeah. Thank you, Councilmember. We put a lot of effort into cultural competency and making sure that we are building a diverse department of officers from all different kinds of aspects. So I very much hear that. That is something we're very committed to and will continue.
For the other council members who haven't gone yet, I'm happy to defer to you. Again, there was Councilmember Casar, Councilmember Tovo, and then me. Feel free to raise your hand if you have questions. Councilmember Casar.
Madam Chair, I appreciate that others have asked some of the questions that were important to me on sexual assault, victim services, and other topics. I have about 8 areas worth of questions. Would you recommend that I handle 4 in this round and 4 in the next? How would you like this run?
I want us to, so just as a time check, it's 9:02. You know, we're going to have to take a vote to go past 10. I have
I
3
hope
questions.
we don't have to do that.
And I know Councilmember Kelly has a couple more questions. Councilmember Alter has, so maybe just start with 2? Does it have to be 4 and 4? Could you do 2
No, it
and
doesn't.
2?
That's why I asked the question.
Yeah, let's do 2,
I'll do 2 for now.
please. Thank you.
Chief, you've spoken some to the issue of sworn vacancies and the work that you're doing there. We also have civilian vacancies at the 911 call center that I know you're aware of, several dozen that are funded but not filled, and some folks have pointed to pay issues, folks making as little as $37,000 being part of what is driving that. Just to keep it quick because of the time we have here, I don't think you need to lay out the whole plan, but can you commit to us that you're going to put all the energy that you can into making sure that we're not only filling those sworn vacancies, but that we are filling those openings at the 911 call center that we have funded?
Yeah, thank you, Councilmember. Very quickly, what I'll tell you is that I'm aware of the issue. We had an initial market study that was done regarding pay, and I think pay is the big driver that is keeping us from filling all of the positions at the call center. And there is another market study that is currently underway. I've spoken with Director Hayes about it, and she informed me that they expect it to be done in November. And I am hopeful that we're going to be able to see how we can continue to raise pay and also get innovative as a department in finding ways to properly compensate the people that are working out there, doing a great job and working hard for us.
Thank you. On the question of internal affairs, the council previously directed that internal affairs investigations, that is investigations that are not criminal but are within the department, be conducted by either civilians or a combination of police and civilians. And this shift would allow for more objectivity in investigations, or at least the perception of more objectivity, but it would also free up officers at APD. The question was earlier, how could we address some of the staffing issues? It takes time to train cadets, but in fact, if we free up some of our existing officers, you don't have to train someone new. We know that officers within IA are not usually patrol officers, but sergeants that might not be doing that kind of work could do other critical work within the department. So my question to you is, if it's funded and directed by council, would you move qualified civilians to assist with internal affairs, and how could you implement this approach in a way that addresses staffing issues at APD, supports officers, supports reform?
Thank you, Councilmember. I'll tell you that I'm open to the idea. I certainly think that there would be a lot of value to bringing in, people with subject matter expertise that are civilians, that have good background investigations. I do think it's important to keep law enforcement involved in the process. They have a lot of experience in the perspective of having done the job and understand when officers take certain actions, and that civilians may or may not understand. And so I think that is still a part of the component. But I certainly would be open to having the discussion about moving that forward and potentially moving it forward.
And of course, we've talked about how ultimately disciplinary decisions still have to be left with the chief. We would have to do something that is legal under state law and under the police contract. And we would want to make sure that it is qualified people in a system that works. But if we find a way that meets those metrics and council funds and directs that, is that something that we can do?
Yeah. It is important to me that discipline decisions remain with the chief, as well as we would have to work through any Chapter 143 issues related to Texas Government Code and the restrictions around civil service. But I think that those are not insurmountable, and we might be able to find a way forward on it.
Thank you.
Councilmember Tova?
Thank you. Thank you, Chief. Thank you for the answers that you provided to us in this forum, as well as in the executive session and in the weeks, or in at least the last week leading until now. This morning, we heard from Mr. Linder of the NAACP, and he also has been communicating with our office through email. And I want to just highlight something that he communicated in one of the emails he sent.
and I'm reading, but I'm also excerpting a little bit. The police challenges in this city and nation are clearly related to culture and addressing the trauma that African American and Latino communities are facing. And he goes on to highlight the importance of restoring confidence, especially among communities that do not have trust in policing. And so I wonder if you could please state what is your commitment, describe what your commitment is, and what possible strategies you might deploy to restore confidence in policing in our community, and especially among communities of color.
Thank you, Council Member. You know, I think that I've been executing culture change at the Austin Police Department. We brought in some groundbreaking types of trainings, both within our cadet class and with our incumbents, the men and women that are out there serving now. And that is only going to continue. I think the engagement with our African American and our Latino communities is extremely important. They're the ones that have been affected at times by actions of the police department. I think that I want to be clear. I think that we have amazing men and women who work here that have a heart for service and that certainly hit the streets every day with an intent to do the right thing. We have got to be smarter as a community overall, and bringing all of our city resources to bear to find ways to kind of get upstream of some of these bad incidents to see if we can intersect them at earlier in the process. I can certainly make a commitment as a police chief to having those dialogues with Mr. Linder as well as other community stakeholders on how we can bring that to bear. And I've had conversations with him before regarding how can the police play a better role in the African American community? How can we build the trust? And he certainly has ideas that we have talked about and that I plan on collaborating with him with. So, yes, to your question, I will make a strong commitment to that.
Thank you very much. So recently, the Office of the Police Monitor, the Office of Police Oversight, along with the Equity Office and the Mayor's Committee for People with Disabilities, had a town hall regarding public safety, and they came back. We just received a memo from OPO with some findings about that. Can you talk about how you might address some of the issue, what your commitment is to addressing some of the concerns that were raised in that public meeting, and what strategies, if any, that you would take to address those and to move the department forward?
Certainly, thank you. The main points that I saw that were coming out of that meeting is really around communication and understanding of, really on both sides. For the officers to understand those that are living with disabilities and the challenges that they face, and then also having, those who are living with disabilities to be able to understand, police interactions and so that we can continue to make those better. We have seen tragic outcomes for, locally, in the state, nationally, when it comes to people that are, that have disabilities or are living with mental illness and other issues in their life. And I really think that it's about education. It's about outreach. It's about creating opportunities for people to have more resources so that, that we can hopefully head off that moment of crisis where they have to call the police. And then we have people that are not our subject matter experts showing up, at a really, critical point in somebody's life.
Thank you very much for that response.
So I will ask my question, and then just to give you guys a heads up, I'm going to pass the chair to Councilmember Alter momentarily to go for the second round. And so my question, excuse me. Okay, so the FBI has identified, first of all, Thank you, Chief, for answering our questions this evening. The FBI has identified right-wing extremism as one of the greatest domestic terror threats our country faces. Yet, last summer, APD's response to reopen Texas protests couldn't have contrasted more with its response to Black Lives Matter demonstrations. The latter was certainly dealt with more harshly than the former. You have a background with the Austin Regional Intelligence Center, which we know has spent an inordinate amount of time focusing on perceived left-wing activity, including a Juneteenth event that I spoke at last year. Given the events of January 6th, I wonder if you have any new perspective you can share with us on how our police department should approach the threat of political extremism.
Thank you, Council Member. You're correct. I have quite a bit of history with the Austin Regional Intelligence Center, serving as its director for a few years. You know, one of the things that I'm very proud of when we stood the center up was its privacy policy and the way that we were looking at data, the way that we were sharing that information back with our community, specifically what we could do with the data and what we couldn't do with the data, and that we very much, we put the respect for First Amendment rights at the forefront. So, you know, a First Amendment protected activity was not to be stored and certainly wasn't to be used against people. You know, that continues to be the way that the Austin Regional Intelligence operates, and we need to make sure that we put the right leadership in charge there to make sure that we're maintaining our own policies. I feel that we have done that. The center provides valuable information, not just in the area of domestic terrorism, but more importantly in the area of criminal investigation support for not just the Austin Police Department, but many police agencies in this area that don't have the same resources that we do. They rely pretty heavily on the center. So that's probably my long way of saying that, to make sure that we are going to protect First Amendment protected activities and really concentrate on criminal activity.
And I appreciate that. Certainly you could tell that I was alluding to the fact that some groups are permitted to do things that other groups are not permitted to do. I'm talking about an inordinate amount of focus on a certain type of group. And typically that certain type of group looks like me. And so my question is, how will, if we are recognizing as a country that extremism on either side of any extreme is a problem, how do we make certain that there is an inordinate amount of activity, police activity, especially violent police activity towards African Americans and Latinos, that doesn't get applied to right-wing extremists that are Anglo?
So, you know, I think that goes in line with our overall mission to treat all people, regardless of race, regardless of gender, regardless of all of the different protected classes, with dignity and respect. That is what I'm going to, you know, when we talk about my vision for the Austin Police Department, it's building a foundation of procedural justice, that we are treating people with dignity and respect, that we are communicating well with people and giving them voice in encounters, that we are, you know, wherever possible, having that lightest touch when it comes to executing public safety, so that we are able to not negatively impact people's lives, and then being transparent through the whole process. So the issues that I've moved towards on the issues of transparency, that is going to continue. I will, if I see disparate treatment that is being done by officers at any point, that will be dealt with. As far as whether, you know, an internal affairs case is appropriate and potential discipline. And importantly, that we lead the right way, that we make our expectations as leadership clear that that is unacceptable. That is the way that I plan to lead the department, and to surround myself with leaders that are going to do the same, that accountability is a part of it, but there's also there's training, there's modeling, and there is a strong message to all of our officers of what the expectations are.
I appreciate that. My second question is, if you were to be confirmed, will you spend time in the community outside of the office? You know, we hear a lot of fifth floor complaints from rank and file when I talk to folks about how sometimes once folks ascend to executive leadership, they fall out of touch. So how much time, do you intend to commit to spending on patrol or, some other kind of beat work to make sure that you don't lose that touch?
Yeah, I appreciate that question a great deal, actually, and was just having this discussion with my staff this morning that if confirmed, that I was going to be out of the office a lot. I think it's incredibly important to me. The leader of the organization needs to be out in front, needs to be highly visible in the community, whether I'm doing media availabilities or I'm at community forums or I'm riding on patrol with the officers. One of the very, very strong things that I've heard from the rank and file is they need to see the chief. It's important to them. I am listening. I am going to be meeting with my officers, whether they're out in patrol, whether they're in the investigative units, wherever they are. They can count on me to show up and be there every single day. I have an amazing staff that can help me run the day-to-day operations of the department. I think my job is to make sure that I become the face of the department for both the men and women of the department as well as for the community.
I'll leave it by saying I appreciate that you recognize that that's a critical component of your position. Thank you. Councilmember Alter, I'm going to step away for just a few minutes.
Sure. I think Councilmember Kelly has mentioned she has more questions. I know Mayor Adler and Kassar and anyone else I have questions too. This is an important decision, so I think we'll be here as long as we need. Councilmember Kelly.
Thank you. Chief, can you help me remember, earlier in tonight's line of questioning, you told the council that all of the detectives in your sex crimes unit had formal training. Is that accurate?
No, ma'am. What I said was that all of the training would be completed within about the next month to 6 weeks, and we're actively working on that.
Okay. So while sitting here this evening, it is important for me to bring this up. Listening to you speak here, it was brought to my attention that one of your detectives on the sex crimes unit has less than a year's experience and no formal training. What they had mentioned, the training that they did have was ending violence against women, but it was just a website. They've not attended any conferences, they've not done any DNA training or no interrogation training, which I want to be really clear here, this is very concerning to me because I think we should all be deeply concerned about the training that these detectives have. Were you aware that that was the case?
So I know that I have some really new detectives in that unit. I want to explain what's going on with regard how attrition is playing a role in that. Of course, to promote to the next rank to sergeant, our detective and corporals are the ones that promote to that rank. Normally, every one of our promotional lists lasts 2 years. I'm about to exhaust my sergeant's list at a year. All of my sergeants will have promoted, which means that I've had a lot of detectives and corporals that have been promoting. Some of those have come out of that unit. And so as I have replaced them, they've been with newer detectives and corporals who have also promoted and are brand new in the unit and don't have the training yet. I've been talking with our grant coordinator to make sure that we are applying the right resources in grants towards that training. And earlier I was talking about that we are seeking, besides the ones that I talked about, which is the interviewing course and the other conference, bringing trainers, qualified trainers from Avawi and others to go ahead and train our folks properly. So that is supposed to happen with virtual trainings beginning as early as December and in-person trainings in the first quarter of next year.
Thank you for explaining that to us. I'm glad to hear that there is a plan to address that critical need if you are confirmed, but I am concerned about the inconsistencies with what the officers are saying versus what you are telling us, and I fully expect a commitment from you that you will work on that with your officers to prevent it from happening in the future.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
I think I said Mayor Adler and then Councilmember Kazar.
Thank you, Councilmember. Chief, policing and public safety is a huge issue in Austin. In fact, it's a huge issue right now in the entire country. It makes this moment when we're confirming a police chief just so incredibly supercharged. And in many ways it needs to be, because one of the principal functions of city government is to make sure that the community is safe. Probably the most important thing that city government is responsible for doing. But it becomes really difficult to have conversations about public safety when there's so much misinformation that exists out in the community. I still hear people say that Austin is not a safe place. I've heard you on many public meetings confirm that Austin is a safe community, as you have said tonight. The Austin Chronicle reports that the new FBI figures have just come out, and it shows again that even in the most recent numbers looking at violent crime, that Austin is in the top 4 safest big cities in the country. There's a lot of discussion in the community and suggestions that Austin defunded police or took $150 million out of police functions or took a third of the budget out of policing. None of those things are true, but they keep getting repeated. I think that one of the most important functions that you have as the police chief is, as someone who is respected and an authority, is to be able to rise above and to make sure that the community has the accurate information, the good and the bad. Because in this community in Austin, one of the safest in the country, that information will be overwhelmingly good. We have challenges with increased homicides, but yet the homicide rate in Austin is one of the lowest in the country. We have to do something about increases. We're watching the same increases happen in virtually every city across the country. We have work to do, but there's so much going right. And I just want to commend you for having the integrity when you went before the state legislature to speak that truth to power. But I think it's real important that you get out even more in our local community and make sure that our community and our citizens get the real facts and the real information. I think you're doing that. I think you did that today. I think you did that in the discussions that you had during the interviews like you've done at the legislature. We're trying to go through a reimagining of public safety to make a safe city even safer. And we need a champion. We need someone as a chief that will do things like recognizing that we don't need our police officers, sworn officers with a badge and a gun, to do animal control services or to be taking reports all the time. There are more important things for our officers to do, and we need them to do it. In my 7 years in this office, I would say almost to a man and a woman, the police officers that I have gotten to know are exemplar employees and exemplar officers. They're exactly the kind of people that we would want to have. And this is a council that supports them. And I think it's real important that you take not only messages to the community, but you take this message back to the force. And I'm going to support your confirmation tonight.
Thank you, Mayor.
Councilmember Kazar.
So Chief, community members, in the lead up to the selection of a permanent chief today as well, raised concerns with internal candidate hiring because state law provides that police chiefs hired internally cannot be terminated in the same way as external candidates. And so, you've mentioned this in meetings before. It's not news to folks that may have heard you say that. You've mentioned this to me and my colleagues, but I think important for the public to hear that if the city manager were to ask you to retire or resign, would you invoke this provision of state law, or would you retire or resign? And appreciate you answering the question. Of course, we all expect success for you, but it is an important question that has been raised about the difference between an internal and external candidate. So would you invoke that state law provision or retire and resign in that case?
Yeah, thank you, council member. I really want to succeed, just to be clear. However, if the city manager indicated that my employment were no longer needed or wanted, I would not try to fall back to a prior rank in the department. I would go ahead and resign, retire.
Thank you, Chief. And just to be clear also, as it relates to what has happened here on the dais just even recently, my view is that if we are at a place where there's a vote of no confidence, my view, which of course I do not expect, and I expect for you to succeed, and that is why you are here. But in my view, if there were that kind of a vote, my view is that the right thing for a police chief to do at that point is to resign or retire, or for the manager to ask for them to do so, or the council could change the manager at that point. My second question here is that I understand that well, not just I understand, we all read it and saw it and it was in the news. The district attorney and county attorney sent an open letter to all of us, talking about officers declining to investigate criminal activity and blamed prosecutors in that process, although those prosecutors said that they would take up those cases where there was danger to public safety. We heard today from community members who testified, including employees at SAFE, that there have been instances where true information was not conveyed by those officers, where it was pointed to budgets or to policy changes which weren't true, and that in fact the police officers could and should investigate those things, and the prosecutors are ready to make sure that we hold people accountable for that. So can you talk to us about what steps you took to respond to the county attorney and district attorney's letters, and what your next steps are to address that issue?
Yeah, thank you, council member. I am aware of the letters that you're talking about, and obviously disappointed if I have officers that are expressing personal opinions, any type of bias in their interactions with our community. I have been very vocal prior to receiving those letters, as I was starting to get those type of reports coming in, with our officers to let them know that that was unacceptable and would be, we were going to have to deal with it. And so when those letters came in and provided a couple of examples of when that happened, and more specifically, every time that I receive a report, whether it's come to a council office or it comes into the Office of Police Oversight as a complaint, or however it is, we investigate every single one. Our officers have the body-worn cameras and in-car cameras, and we can review exactly what was said and take appropriate action to make sure that doesn't happen any further. I'm not going to make excuse for our officers. It's unacceptable. I think that part of what is driving it is, the issues that we've been talking about tonight around the national narrative around policing, and it's really tough to be a police officer right now, around staffing issues, just around the general things that are going on with the profession right now that are leading to frustration. And we see that frustration manifest itself with these type of things happening. But it doesn't matter, because like I said, it is unacceptable. And so I will continue to address those. To directly answer your question, I have communicated with the county and district attorneys about any instances as they are, and quite honestly, they are still sending them to me as they find them, and I am responding directly back to them in a timely manner to let them know this is what we found and this is how it was handled.
Thank you. And so we do have, there's no policy or other issue keeping us from investigating and holding folks accountable for those public safety issues that have been raised to you. Just to be clear for the community, there is no policy or obstacle to our officers handling those public safety
That's
issues.
absolutely correct.
Thank you. One last question, and then I'll pass along the microphone. It is to this issue of staffing that you just raised. It's partly a commitment on my part as well. I believe, as you've laid out, if we're not going to have an arbitrary, or if you don't support an arbitrary metric to what the right number of police officers is, it still leaves open the question of where should we land? And I want to commit to having a conversation with our community, with you leading that conversation, but I believe it should also be across departmental conversation, because funding in one department then means we have to make sure we have enough funding for everything else. But having that broad community conversation to figure out, as you've stated, how do we get the right services into our community and the right staffing levels? And so I want to provide this opportunity to you, because I would like to hear your commitment for me not to pick a number, for you not to pick, for nobody to go out and pick their way of doing it until we maybe have that more open conversation where I want to hear from people that I disagree with or people I haven't heard from before, and really host that conversation so that we can come together around how it is within a reimagined police department we do this right. So I want to hear from you, because you and I have had this conversation about how you see that moving forward, and if we can have that commitment from you, that we can have that broad conversation, bring folks in, hear from other departments, and find the right path.
Yeah, thank you. To answer your question, yes, you have my commitment to do that. I think it's important for us as a city, of which, and as a city government, of which the police department is one department, to have meaningful conversation about, how do we deliver effective police services? Overall, how do we affect overall public safety and keep that discussion moving forward? And I think it's important to engage with other departments and with council on those issues as we, at the department, kind of, move forward what we think is the appropriate staffing level. So yes, I will do that.
So I had a question, Councilmember Kitchen, Councilmember Poole. After I speak, do you want to take it back? Okay, great, thank you. Chief, I want to just comment, going back to Councilmember Kelly's comment about the untrained detective working in sexual assault. I understand the issues of attrition, but budgets, as we say, are reflections of value, and the APD has a budget of 400-some million, and training doesn't really cost that much money if it's a priority. And so I'm surprised by that, and I'm very concerned by that, and I hope that one of your next steps, as you have promised us to address the area of sexual assault, will be to make sure that our detectives who are brave and strong enough to work in the sex crime unit, because it is an emotional position, you're coming in contact with a lot there, that they receive the training they need to succeed, both for themselves and for the victims. So I hope that you will commit to doing that ASAP.
I will. We have some very new detectives actually in that unit. Like the tenure in that unit is pretty varied because we have 20 detectives. But I do have some new detectives in there that have not yet received all of the training that is required. We have made sure that we are putting them through some of what we feel are the most important trainings very quickly, and we'll have all of the detectives trained, like I said, within the next 4 to 6 weeks. But the training doesn't stop with one training. We have to continue to, I've talked about innovation and continued ways to conduct the investigations and have good outcomes for survivors, and that really means that our detectives have to be well trained. And so, we've been working in different areas very diligently. I mentioned our SAKI grant, which does provide for training and locating, procuring that training, and bringing it in within the next few months, like I was talking about.
Thank you, and I just want to be clear that new detectives in this department can be great if they're well-trained, but we need to set them up for success. It's not fair to them. So one of the things that I get a lot of questions about, obviously you would be an internal hire if confirmed as chief. So help me understand how I would articulate an answer to this question. How can someone who spent his entire career in APD bring a fresh and new perspective and reform it, possibly having to push and maybe lose some relationships along the way as you do so?
Thanks for that question. You know, I can certainly point to the things that I've done over the last 6 months that have been in stark contrast to the way that Chief Manley operated. I have changed many of his policies and some of his bigger policies that I felt that needed to be changed in that way. I think just because I've come up in the organization doesn't mean that I don't bring fresh ideas to the table. I truly, I have been working very diligently in the area of reimagination and including the work that we're doing right now at the academy and some of the other things that we're doing. But, what I can assure you is that, I am going to be responsive, continue to be responsive, and I hope that the council members really feel this way, is that, when the communication has come to me that I have been responsive and that will continue. Coming up in the department does not mean that you cannot do things differently and that you can't find better ways to do things. I think that it's very important that I have good relationships with the officers, but I won't sacrifice public safety for it. I can just provide you my strongest assurances for that.
Thank you. One other question that I wanted to ask is, can you help us understand your views on Black Lives Matter?
I beg your pardon on what?
Can you help us understand your views on Black Lives Matter, the Black Lives Matter movement?
So, certainly have, I think, an understanding of the movement. I think that my eyes were opened a little bit more when I actually went through our groundwater analysis course that we are putting our officers through around systemic and institutional racism. When I thought going into that class that I had a good understanding of the Black life experience, and then figured out that I didn't. And so, that has certainly opened my eyes to the movement and to the importance of treating people with dignity and respect regardless of race, regardless of the things that I've been talking about regarding protected classes, and just making sure that we treat everyone with, with that same dignity and respect that we would want our family members, that we want ourselves treated with. And I don't think that has always happened. I think that there has been a problem with our profession, and there have even been problems over the years in our own department. And we can't shy away from that. We need to shine a light on it. And so that is the commitment that I continue to make in the trainings that we continue to push forward, so that others can have, their own kind of aha moments like I've described at the beginning of that course about what systemic and institutional racism really means.
Councilmember Kitchen.
Thank you, Chief. I appreciate all the answers you've given, and I appreciate the questions from my colleagues. Many of them were the same questions that I had. So I have one last question for you, and we've talked about this. You've answered it to some extent so far, but I'm just going to ask it in a little different way. And that is, that policing is changing. And I'd like to ask you to give you the opportunity to just talk for a minute about the role of a chief and in this environment as policing is changing.
Yeah, thank you, Councilmember. I agree. Policing has changed. And, I'm a career law enforcement officer. I've done almost 30 years total. And I can tell you that from the time that I started to where we are today, the way that the community views the police and the way really that we operate has changed significantly. And I think that it's only really just started to change. I think that we need change agents. You need people that are going to lead from the front and that are going to be courageous to step out and be ready to move in different directions, even if there is resistance. I think that I have already started doing that with the Austin Police Department. And that, I make a commitment to continue to look at ways that we can increase trust and legitimacy with the Austin Police Department and in the community that it serves. That factor is not where it needs to be right now. That piece needs work. And so I make a commitment. To me, that is my job. That is my number one priority with all the other priorities that we have right now to make sure that we're getting it right. We need to have the community understand what we're trying to do as a police department, that we're here to help, not to hurt, and that we're going to continue to engage and have good dialogue. I make a commitment to be out front doing that every day.
Thank you, and I want to thank you for just one example of that, and that's the policy change you made around releasing body camera footage recently. I want to thank you for that. So I just want to thank you for all your answers to the many questions that we've been asking you today. This is very important for our community, and as you recognize. And I want to let you know that I am supporting you. I am very pleased with the answers you've given. I consider you to be genuine and real in your approach, and appreciate the candor with which you're speaking to us. And I want to say thank you for that. So I will be supporting you.
Thank you, Councilmember.
Councilmember Poole.
Thanks so much. So my last question for you tonight, I'd like to ask you to provide a regular report to the council about the progress on all of the public commitments that we're talking about tonight that you're offering. I'm thinking quarterly would be a good start, but we can determine that timing with input from you and the city manager so that we can have kind of a continued dialogue on these topics that are of real interest and concern to our community. Does that sound like
I can do that.
a good plan? Okay, thanks. Well, thank you, Chief, for your thoughtful and full answers to questions being asked tonight and throughout this entire selection process. I too, would like to state my support for your appointment, and that I do intend to vote yes to approve your appointment this evening.
Thank you, Councilmember.
Thank you.
Councilmember Renteria.
Yes, Chief, when this search started and when the manager reduced it down to three persons, I received a lot of phone calls from people that have worked with you in the community, especially a lot of Hispanic community members that are leaders in my area, and they spoke just, they said that you're the type of officer that went to the meetings, you responded to all their requests, and that you did an outstanding job. I even had one of your old colleagues, I guess, through your old cadet class, that said that you weren't one of the good old boys, that you did not hang out with the ones that that caused a lot of problems in my neighborhood. So I took all of that in, and I believe in community policing. I think that the more you go out into the community, the more that we're going to have a real strong, safe community. And just want to let you know that I am also going to support you.
Thank you, Councilmember.
Any other Councilmember Casar? Oh, I'm sorry. Anybody who hasn't gone yet? My notes show that Councilmember Tovo, Ellis, Fuentes, and myself have not gone yet. Councilmember Ellis?
I don't mind asking another question. As far as the crime technician response we were discussing earlier, I have heard some concerns of people just wanting to make sure that investigations are handled in a timely fashion and very thoroughly. Are you fully committed to doing that, knowing it may not be an armed officer showing up if the perpetrator is no longer on site, but that people still deserve an authentic investigation and to, feel like their case is being taken very seriously when something bad happens to them?
Absolutely. Those cases, regardless of whether an officer's on scene writing it or it's taken in another fashion, are still routed to our investigative units for follow-up.
I really appreciate that. I do appreciate you taking so much time to answer our questions. Obviously, this is a very important moment for us. In all the conversations that I've had with you over the past few months, you've been very transparent with me and very responsive, so I appreciate that. You've even helped me with some constituents when I just had questions. You at least called me back, I think, the same day to tell me what you could tell me, even though you couldn't tell me everything about the situation. But I am going to be supporting you tonight, and I wish you luck in this position.
Thank you, Councilmember.
Councilmember Fuentes?
Thank you. Yes, I have one more question. See, Chief Chacon, could you tell us what does accountability and transparency mean and look like to you in regards to sex crimes at APD?
With regards to what, I'm sorry?
Sex crimes?
So, I think part of the transparency piece is going to be a quarterly report that I'm going to be giving to City Council about how we're making progress on all the things that I've talked about tonight. I think that the accountability piece is going to be me fulfilling the obligations that I have said that I am going to do, including around our victim services piece, including the training that I want all of our detectives to go through to make sure that we have the right leadership in place, and that we are really valuing those investigations. And that is what I plan to show.
Thank you. And I would add also sharing the data of the reporting of sex crimes. That would go a long way. I know that was a concern that was raised from the community of having consistent reporting on the level of sex crimes that are being committed in our community. In advance of today's vote, I met with Interim Chief Chacon. I shared with him, as I have in the past, about the reform that I want to see, one that is centered on holistic de-escalation training and practices for both cadets and in-service officers as it relates to the high number of officer-involved incidents, specifically in District 2. We have one of the highest rates of officer-involved shootings. In addition to community policing with and for our Black and Brown communities. It remains a priority now more than ever that our local law enforcement department not only embraces the reimagined culture of policing, but they also use the reformed approach to protect and serve the most vulnerable communities. I also shared my concerns with Chief Chacon about seeking a better victim-centered approach to how our sexual assault cases are prioritized, including APD's response to sexual assault survivors and their cases, academy curriculum reform, and accountability and transparency around the way sexual crimes are reported and handled. I support Chief Chacon's appointment today, and I plan to hold him accountable for the follow-through our community expects and deserves. I especially appreciate, Chief Chacon, you sharing your vision for setting a foundation of procedural justice. I think that will go a long way. Reimagining public safety does not fall on any single individual, but rather an entire system. We must all do our part to ensure every Austinite feels safe in our city. I believe Chief Chacon is willing and able to do his part in this effort.
Thank you, Councilmember.
Councilmember Tovo, did you have any additional questions?
I do not, thank you.
In which case, I'm the last one who hasn't gone yet, and I have two questions. One, actually, Councilmember Fuentes teed this up for me. Visibility is great, but so is transparency. I'd like to know what you're going to do to make your public information more accessible to the media and to the public at large.
We are really looking at how we're retooling our public information office right now to make sure that we're doing just that. We've try to be very responsive to our media partners. I think that, there are probably departments around the country really just, we'll talk around the state because they operate under the state rules around public information requests. And the state actually gives most departments wide latitude on how much time they need, and you can take up to 10 days or longer to provide responses. We try to get responses that same day, within a day, because we know how important it is for our community to have that information. So that's going to continue. I think also that, it's important for me to lead from the front with a lot of the messaging to make sure that people understand what the department is doing, and certainly engage with those community partners and our media partners on getting the information out in a timely way.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I think it's of the utmost importance you were talking about that trust piece earlier, and you know the relevance of it. And that's a good segue into, a lot of people don't realize this, but there is more than one police union. And some of the members of the lesser-known unions that I've talked to told me about misogyny and discrimination and retaliation inside the department. Just like this council, we want a police department that mirrors the diversity of our community. How do you plan to not only recruit a diverse department, but to ensure that minority officers feel empowered to serve their community?
Yeah, thank you. Couple things that I can say on that. First of all, with regard to our recruiting division, we have built the most diverse unit in our department is in our recruiting division. We have more officers of color. We have many women. We have, officers representing LGBTQ that are in that unit, so that as they go out into our community, both locally and further, to do the recruiting, that people see officers that look like them. And that makes a lot of sense to them. And so they're able to be very effective in those recruiting efforts. I have no tolerance for any of the things that you started to mention, whether it's misogyny or any type of racist behavior. I will hold officers accountable. There has to be, the discussion that happens when I open up either a cadet class or we have new employee orientations once a month with our brand new civilian employees. One of the first statements that I make right out of the box is that, racism, discrimination, and retaliation are not tolerated at the Austin Police Department. I say that every single time. And so I tell them that if they are a victim of it, they're to report it. If they see it, they should call it out when they see it. And of course, they should never participate in it themselves. So we're building a culture of respect and dignity.
I appreciate that. As you were saying that, I was thinking, but I know for a fact that there are people who are suffering from it. And I know for a fact that there are people who will never tell a soul. I also know for a fact that, just generally speaking, I think as you were talking about policing earlier and how difficult it is to be a part of the profession currently, I think it's difficult for some people. And while I can appreciate that, having folks look at your role and not understand the degree of sacrifice and danger, frankly, and it's a difficult job. Somebody told me one time you practically have to be superhuman to be a good cop, because you get abused and tattered and battered, and you still have to show up and be a professional, a consummate, mature, emotionally mature professional. And that said, there are a lot of folks who just don't cut the mustard, and they should be cops anyway, as far as I'm concerned. But I also want to say, I think there's a fundamental paradigm shift in what law enforcement looks like, and there's going to be some discomfort. And so I just want to make certain that as we're going through this growth period, this shift period, like the shift from the rotary phone to the cellular phone, there was some discomfort in that space in between. But I really want to make certain that you see the council as an ally, as colleagues, as people that you want to make sure that you're having these regular check-ins and collaborative communications with. to make certain that as we go through that tricky part, that growing pains part, that we're not, that there aren't any gaps. Those are some of my biggest concerns is the gaps, you know, and I'll leave you with this. I was talking to somebody recently, and we were talking about attrition, and it was a group of first responders, and during the course of the conversation, one complained about all the extra work. What he was talking about was having to do training on bias, implicit bias, and having to learn things that didn't have anything to do with police work, when in fact they actually do have everything to do with police work, including, you know, how to deal with trans members of our community and treat them with dignity and respect and not misgender them. And those are, it seems small, but it's critical to some people's lives, and that respect and dignity that you made reference to. That said, this particular individual said that they'd probably just leave the profession. And all I could think was, good, we don't want cops like you anyway. And so I hope that, I'm not asking you to say that, but I hope that you recognize that some people don't deserve the honor to wear the badge anyway. And so we can't keep them all, and I'm just fine with that. I'll leave you with this. I didn't know whether or not I would support you this evening. I was asking questions because I just didn't think we were ready yet. I thought we needed more time, recognizing just how many questions my colleagues still had, recognizing how many questions were still coming from the community. I felt like it was my inherent duty and responsibility to really make sure that we were there before we made a decision. But I'm gauging from my colleagues' responses, and I've appreciated your responses. I think in large part the police chief is a person who's going to need to be unflappable and be cool under pressure and have cameras in your face and be able to answer questions and respond to communities. And you personally sat in that room in Hoover's, and that room was hot, you know, and I don't mean the heat, and I don't mean the food either. And so that said, I think you keep your cool when you need to, and that's critical. I think it's so very important. And so I think as we walk away from this evening, you will probably have my support.
Thank you, Councilmember. Mayor Pro Tem.
I believe Councilmember Kassar and then Councilmember Alter.
Yeah, thank you.
Mhm.
And to that last point, Mayor Pro Tem, I think, I think that having that level of leadership and accountability and transparency helps us keep the folks that we really do want to keep. There was a story in the Chronicle today about an officer who spoke up about and filed a complaint about discomfort associated with what he heard as anti-Semitic tropes, people saying that COVID was an invention of politicians, the sorts of things that don't make for good policing or good critical thinking. And of course, because there's ultimately no discipline in that case, the public can't ever fully know what is behind all of that. It's not just about that one case, but really about making sure that those officers that want the right thing to be done and want good accountability and transparency, that we are able to keep them. So my last couple of questions is one, you've talked quite a bit about the fact that we have now lower crime rates, that the crime rates have started to go down, but we do still have that concerning rise in gun crime and in homicides in particular. In your view, illegal guns seems to be kind of the primary driver along with the national trends on gun crime. Is that right?
I think that is
homicides.
one of the driving factors right now for our homicide and aggravated assaults, yes.
Allergies.
Some folks have pointed to the question of PR bonds. With the data that you have now, I think you've mentioned to me that about one of the 60-plus cases right now, you can take a look at somebody currently being any information more than that one at this point.
I don't have any information to present on that right now, council member. I have had conversations with our violent crime investigators that have expressed concerns with PR bonds. I think it's an area that we definitely need to look at and would be able to provide you, better figures in the future.
That'd be great. But at the current moment, you've got about one homicide that you think might be linked to that, and you'll take a look to see if there's any more than that one.
I've been told about one. I'd have to check to see if we have more.
Thank you. My last question here is sort of about where reimagining goes from here and real solutions to 911 calls. You know, there are these persistent public safety and quality of life issues in our community that need solutions. And so often, as we've talked about, police are sent to be first responders to those problems, even if they are not the best equipped to handle those issues. And I want to be really clear here tonight, because I know that there are folks, lots of folks in the department watching, that I don't see that as the fault of the department or of officers, but a fault in our overall system of local government and how we have to evolve. And I think that our community could really use you as our police chief to acknowledge that challenge, because you've spent so much time on the force here in Austin, and then genuinely work with us on how to fix it in a way that's going to actually provide solutions for community members and take work off of officers' plates that they're not best set up to do. Some really clear examples for me in my time in office have been around addiction and mental health, and certain addresses and houses that are just getting call after call after call, just so many 911 calls and police responses. And usually I find that neighbors don't actually get the solution that they want because police officers aren't going to magically be able to fix addiction or a mental health issue, because that's just not what they are meant to do. So neighbors want the solution. It's such a drain on our policing resources, and we still haven't quite gotten to the place where we have a real conversation amongst members of the dais, amongst the police department, other agencies, to say, hey, I might actually need be able to send my guys to go do this other work. Guys and girls, men and women of the police department, to do this other work. But we need somebody else to cover this. And if I could only have this extra substance use program or these extra mental health folks, this is how many fewer 911 calls police officers would have to go to. And so what I would really want is to be able to lean on your decades of experience in the department to help us find those solutions that work. And can we find a way to make this process less contentious in a way that builds a path forward with our community, that is data-driven and says, there are some of these calls that we can actually take off of police officers, and that you could come forward to us bringing those solutions forward yourself. So tell me your thoughts there, because it just seems like there are it seems to me that there is low-hanging fruit of places where we are just spending a lot of police resources where we could be doing something better.
Councilmember Casar and Chief Chacon, if you guys will offer me just a moment. We need to vote to go past 10 o'clock. It's only a few minutes past, but it's 10:04. Councilmember Poole made the motion. It's seconded by Councilmember Tovo. All in favor?
Mayor Pro Tem,
I can't.
I was seconding the motion, but I do have a comment.
Okay.
I'm not sure how many more rounds of questions we have, but I
I
was
don't know
going.
that we have a lot. I think if anything, we're closing up.
I was just going to suggest that if there are more questions to come, that we just afford a 5-minute recess if the chief or anyone else would like to take one. I think we very rarely have sort of one person going for so long, and it's just.
I understand. For
So,
what it's worth, I don't
yeah,
have a
know
gavel
whether
or
the
anything,
chief-
but my thought was this was our last pass.
Okay, very good, thank you.
So all in favor of us going past 10 o'clock this evening? I see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 hands. Am I missing 10? So.
I'm a no.
I
I don't
thought that.
feel-
So 10-1 to go past 10 PM. Okay, I'm sorry. Chief Chacon, the mic is back on you.
Chief Chacon, would you like some more water?
That'd be awesome.
I would be glad to get you some. I think we have some down here.
Do you need a break? Because we can certainly take a 5-minute break. Would you like a 5-minute break, Chief Chacon? Is that what you-
I'm fine. Yeah, if I can just get some water, I'll be all right. Thank you. I want to answer the council member's question with regard to how we can be innovative around certain types of calls. If there is an ability to find and thank you for that, council member. If we have the ability to find a way, and the example that you gave it's the first one that comes to my mind, which is around mental health. You know, we have been working in that area for a really long time and trying to find good, effective ways to actually move the needle on response to mental health crisis. I think we've made some significant progress. We've talked about it a little bit tonight in our 911 call center and trying to divert at that earliest intercept. However, we are not stopping there, and we continue. We're working through the programs that we have with Meadows on other multidisciplinary teams that are similar, essentially, to what HOST does, our homelessness team. But they are directly geared to mental health. So it's a similar type of makeup. That is something that is in the works that we're working with EMS and EMS specifically because they provide the community health paramedic and with integral care because they provide that clinician that we need. So trying to find some alternate ways to, instead of an emergency police response, that just makes sense for people. So we're going to continue to innovate. We're going to continue to find alternative measures.
Thank you for that. And we'll continue to follow up on the issues that we've raised tonight and that we raised when you were appointed interim chief. I know that there's still work to be done to get to consensus on use of force policies, as we talked about during the last appointment, racial disparities and arrests and traffic stops. I think that you've heard from the dais all of the questions around sexual assault, and I think that the policy changes that we can make together can help us settle the lawsuit brought forward by survivors, and also you've heard a lot from us about addressing gun crime and reimagining public safety. So as we continue to do that work, I want you and the department to succeed. That will help us all succeed, and I plan on voting yes tonight.
Thank you.
Colleagues, we have Council Member Alter and Kelly next, but it sounds as though there might be some will to take a 5-minute break. I see a very hard head shake. That's not the case. Raise your hand if you need a break, please, so I can get some indication. Okay, thank you. Councilmember Alter and then Councilmember Kelly.
Thank you. Chief, I appreciate all your time and your answers tonight. It's clear that you bring many needed qualities for this position and you care deeply about the city, the department, and your officers. And you have been very responsive and respectful of the council and working to understand where we are at. I am hopeful that you'll bring the needed cultural change to the department. We've had a chance to work together, though, over the last few weeks and months, and I think you know that I like to do my homework. We are being asked to make the most important decision that we make with just a little bit over a week's time. And I have had an opportunity to talk to you and talk to several people, dove particularly into the sexual assault issue and into the academy with mixed results. So on the academy, I believe that your heart is in it. I believe that you are trying. I believe you have a very, very steep task that has been put before you, and that you are taking steps to meet those goals. There's a lot of positive there. There are still bumps, and there's still a looming deadline of February that I am not convinced yet that we have marshaled our resources to make. But I hope that you and the city manager will get there. I still have really serious concerns about sexual assault and how that has been handled on your watch as an assistant chief before that and as interim. I know, for me, this is an issue that primarily affects women, and the lack of prioritization that predates you, but of what I'm seeing gives me a lot of pause. From what I heard, you have declined to elevate the victim services manager to your executive team. I appreciate the movements that you have indicated. To me, this is an easy ask, and declining it to make this change really indicates how you think about victim services and sexual assault, and it's challenging for me. There was a first interim report from the PERF that came out, and it appears that you haven't read it. And that is deeply disturbing given the stories that we've heard from our survivors, given what we've heard from this dais about our intention to be more victim-centered and to address the challenges of sexual assault response within our system. And that doesn't only fall on APD. APD is not the ones perpetrating the crime in the first place. This is one of my top priorities. I'm going to take you at your word that you are going to work at it, and I think my colleagues are working hard to also hold you accountable. I want to work together with you to transform this area and to reimagine public safety. But as we talked about the other day, each of us in our jobs has to make tough decisions, and we don't always get to make those decisions with the information that we would like. Given that I don't have the time, that's not the will of the dais to take more time, I'm not going to be able to support your confirmation today. But that being said, once you are confirmed as chief, I will work with you, as is our roles, to keep the city safe, and wish you all the best and want you to succeed. But I, at the end of the day, have to be comfortable with my vote with the information that I have available to me today. And I hope that you will prove me wrong. But that's where I'm going to end up tonight. And I look forward to working with you, since it seems to be the will of the dais.
Councilmember Kelly, and then Councilmember Kitchen.
Thank you, and thank you, Chief Chacon, for the line of questioning that you've answered thus far. I would be remiss if I didn't bring this last item up. Many of us have heard that there is claims of retaliation against a detective in your department recently. While I know that's under investigation, I'd like to know how you will cultivate a culture at the department where retaliation doesn't occur. Could you speak to that, please?
I think that the results of that investigation are going to be public soon. The investigation has been completed, and so I'm going to let the investigation certainly speak for itself. I've voiced very strongly tonight my feelings regarding retaliation, discrimination, and any type of behavior like that is not tolerated at the Austin Police Department. So to be clear, it was at my request that the investigation initiate, and I'm sure that the results will be made public.
Thank you for answering that. I appreciate how Councilmember Alter so eloquently put how she would vote this evening. And I just want to reiterate as well that while my vote is no, I will still have a strong commitment to be working with you to ensure that the Austin Police Department gets to be back to being the shining light of an example of what a department, the best department in the United States, can be. Thank you very much.
Councilmember, it is on. Councilmember Kitchen?
Yes, and Chief, I think it's important to have a more complete answer with regard to the role of the Victim Services Manager. I would like to give you the opportunity to speak to the level of decision-making that you intend to provide that person.
Thank you, Councilmember. So as I committed earlier, I will bring that person. Number one, they're going to have direct access to me and to executive staff. I think that the Victim Services Manager, Kachina Clark, has largely enjoyed that during my time as both an assistant and as an interim chief. But she can certainly directly reach out to me with any issues that she is seeing, with how her counselors are not only interacting with victims with sex crimes, but really with any of the investigative units that they support. I'm going to formalize a process so that she has eyes, her and her staff have eyes on any policy decisions that we're making to make sure that they're in line with what we're trying to accomplish in protecting victims. And most importantly, I'm going to bring her into the staff meetings. That doesn't mean that she has to sit there and not say anything. That means that she has the same voice that the others that participate in that staff meeting, whether it is an assistant chief, whether it is one of our appointed, high-level executives in the department, city legal is in those. So, bringing them in and letting her have that same voice will have a very strong effect on the issues that I think are important to what we've spoken to tonight.
And if I'm understanding correctly, the role in reviewing policy is the same level and same role as others on your executive team with regard to her influence on policy.
That's correct. The way that policy works right now, it goes through each one of our assistant chiefs to lay eyes on, for them to provide any feedback, and we're simply adding that division manager on there to provide that same feedback.
Mayor Adler? You're muted.
You're on mute.
Mayor Pro Tem, I move confirmation of the city manager's appointment of Joseph Chacon as police chief.
So Mayor Adler has moved that we move forward with the appointment of Chief Chacon. Is there a second? Seconded by Councilmember Tovo. Give me just a moment, I'm sorry. I gotta make sure I have all my stuff ready. Any discussion? All right. Councilmember Tovo.
Just briefly, I really want to echo my colleagues' thanks for your candid and sincere engagement with these questions and all of the conversations that we've had. And I'm very happy to support you as our next police chief, and look forward to continuing to support you as you do the important work that you've committed to.
Thank you,
And have
Councilmember.
been doing.
And I actually have a few remarks of my own. So public safety is of paramount importance to all of us on the dais. Our police department is just one part of the larger public safety picture, but it's obviously a very big part, and it hasn't always been a fully successful part. I think you've acknowledged that this evening. I don't have to go over all the vivid reasons that we embarked on our effort last year to reimagine public safety and the roles and structures of our police department. The state has closed off a lot of paths that we could have taken on that journey, but I think we owe it to our community to keep moving forward. And we need a chief who will be a collaborative partner in that journey. During his tenure, Chief Chacon, during your tenure, has demonstrated his willingness to be that collaborative partner. I appreciate the new body cam review policy that you've instituted. I appreciate your forthrightness when it comes to your opinion about police staffing. I appreciate that you stood there and had the hardest job interview I've ever watched in my life, and you didn't flap once, and I really appreciate that. I can't emphasize enough how important I believe that is. I also appreciate your ability to take criticism. It's important, and you're gonna get a lot of it. And so I really appreciate that you can take it, and my hope is that you don't just take it, but that you do something with it. So I'm looking forward to working together. I believe that you can successfully do the job. I think that we as a council, we get to vote yes or vote no during this process, but we don't have direct control over who our police chief is. We do, however, have a bit more say when it comes to the person who chooses the chief. That's the accountability backstop. And it's one of our constituents should rightfully hold us to. So I'm happy to move forward with your promotion. I look forward to working with you in the future. So I suppose it's time to take that vote. Or Councilmember Poole.
I just wanted to add a few things too. I support the city manager's choice of Joe Chacon for chief of police for the Austin Police Department. Chief Chacon is well-positioned as a longtime leader at APD, and I'm confident he is the best choice to lead our police force, to be a change agent here, and to keep Austin a safe city. I look to our sworn officers, and in particular the Austin Police Association and its leadership, to provide additional leadership and support for this choice in a way that will unify our community and move us all forward. Thanks.
Thank you.
Any other discussion? All right, you guys ready to take a vote? All in favor? I count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. All opposed? Looks like you got a new job, 9-2.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. I just want to say very quickly, thank you. Thank you for the tough questions. Thank you for everything that I know this council cares very deeply for this community and what you're doing. And thank you for trusting me to do this job. And I promise that I will not let you down. Thank you.
All right, folks, with that, at 10:22 p.m., this meeting of the Austin City Council is adjourned.
Give it up to the gods I can't see, into the sky and over the trees. I give it up to you and to me. It's all that I